Hey everybody, so as the weather is getting a little bit cooler and fall has come, today I wanted to show you guys how to make one of the really, really great fall food items out there, and that is apple butter. Apple butter, really easy to make, plus it's one of those things that you can just put in a slow cooker all day. Your house smells really good, and after like 8 hours, you've got this really great apple butter. So we're going to get right into that in our episode today. When it comes to making apple butter, I like to put the seasoning base together first.
Mix 1/2 cup granulated sugar, 1 cup brown sugar, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1 teaspoon ground allspice, 1/2 teaspoon ground clove, and freshly ground nutmeg.
You can add more of these seasonings to your seasoning base if that's what you'd like, to have a kind of more strong supporting flavors, but I like to keep it a little bit subtle because you want to let those apples kind of speak for themselves a little bit. When it comes to the apples, we're going to be going with about 3 to 4 pounds of mixed variety of apples for this apple butter. We've got some Fuji apples in there. We've got some golden delicious apples. We even have a red delicious apple in there. So really whatever you have, you can mess around with different varieties of apples if you want, and you want to peel them, core them, and chop them up into little cubes. You want to make sure that when you're chopping your apples that your apple cuts are consistent, because that allows for the apples to cook through evenly. So once we chop our apples, we want to then put them into our slow cooker. Then after that, we want to put in our seasoning base. So you'll dump that seasoning base right over top of your apples. And then to finish this, we're going to add 2 ingredients.
Add a dash of vanilla and 2 ounces of a bourbon of your choice.
Now this bourbon is going to help add a little bit of depth to the flavor of the apple butter, and then we're going to hit it with a little bit more bourbon at the very end. Once you have your bourbon, your vanilla, your seasoning base, and your apples all in your crock pot, you're going to give that a stir, and then you're going to set your timer on your crock pot for 8 hours, and then come back and see what's happening. If you don't have a crock pot, you can do this over a stove. You just want to make sure you do it over a very low heat. You don't want those sugars to burn and caramelize. You don't want that burned sugar because that'll really leave kind of a bitter taste in there. So while the apple butter is cooking, you're going to notice something really great happens in your house. All of those warming spices that you use, like the cinnamon and the allspice and the clove, they're really just going to kind of permeate your whole house. So if you have guests coming over, they're going to know that like fall is in the room, and it's very, very cool. It smells great. It's going to keep you hungry. You're going to want to dig right into that apple butter as soon as it's done. So we set our timer for 8 hours, but I think for this one it actually took about 10 hours, which is fine. This can really cook for a long time. So how do you know that the apple butter is done? Really, it's done whenever the time is up. All you're really doing after that 8 hours is really just checking for the consistency. The apples are cooked through, so as long as they're cooked through, you can puree them just fine and they're good to go. And then you're going to want to take an immersion blender. Take that immersion blender, stick it all the way to the bottom of your crock pot, and then you can use the immersion blender to blend all of that apple butter to make it nice and smooth, almost like an apple sauce in a way. Now, if you don't have an immersion blender, you can do this in a regular home blender. You just want to be careful whenever you blend anything that's hot. You don't want to do it in too large of batches. Do it in small batches. Let it cool a little bit before you blend. Otherwise, you'll create apple napalm, which will hurt you, and that's not good. So once you've gone through with your immersion blender and you've blended it and you've got the consistency that you like, you actually have two options here. One, you can just say, I'm done, or you can actually allow this to cook for another hour, 2 hours to evaporate some more of that liquid out for a thicker consistency. Where we are with this one, I felt it was pretty good, so we were ready to finish it. Another thing to remember is when you're looking at your initial pop, because you have all those sugars in there, the final product, once it cools, is going to be a lot thicker than it appears in the pot.
Add a pinch of salt and 1 ounce bourbon.
That's going to give it that extra bourbon punch, and with that little subtle hint of booziness, just lets you know that it's there. All right, so once you've got your apple butter pureed, you've got your bourbon added, you can go ahead and jar this up. It really does stay for a very long time, and it has all kinds of applications. You can put it in oatmeal, but for me personally, my favorite application for this is just a nice piece of toasted sourdough bread. Ooh, you can also put apple butter on ice cream, which is amazing, and then maybe crumble some graham crackers and drop it on there, do a little apple pie ice cream. That's good living. Apple butter is one of those things that is really great to try to make if you want to really kind of cozy up to the fall season. It's a great way to kick off fall. It's something that you can keep, in your fridge. Break it out for breakfast, break it out for desserts. It's really, really great. And you should definitely give it a try because it's one of those things that will make you feel the season. Autumn has come. The trees are starting to die. The leaves are withering and turning brown and falling to the ground. What can you do to avoid such dark, tumultuous times? You can make apple butter. I once had a baseball coach who, when he was trying to insult us, he'd be like, "You don't know the difference between apple butter and peanut butter." At the time, I didn't.